Hello, I'm Tara Brabazon, and welcome to the Post 89. Yes, finally, the end of our How to Get a Job series. And this one's a soft ending, but a meaningful ending. Never enter a job without locating your exits. This whole series has been about you and empowering you, so that you have choices, you have autonomy, and you are as far away from desperation as I can get you. And really, our argument has come really the whole way through from Karl Marx's double freedom. Firstly, we've only got our labour power to sell, that's the first freedom. But what we've been trying to develop through this series is enlivening that second freedom, that you can sell your labour power to anyone. Great. And so we're going to continue that imperative today as we conclude the series. So you've got yourself a job. Amazing. Well done. Congratulations. Yes. But as we finish this series, I don't want to sort of finish with a shout. Woo, woo, woo. I want to finish with a whisper to your future. You see, every job that we enter, we have to prepare ourselves for the next job. And there are many reasons for that. The instability of the contemporary workplace, we really can't underestimate at the moment. You know, you may be restructured out of the organisation. The wonderful boss that you worked for suddenly decides to leave. You may be in a casual contract or a very short-term contract role. They are increasing in number. But also, can I say, you may suddenly enter a truly dreadful situation of people bullying and attacking you on a daily basis. So we can move from really enjoying our working life to one day we're in a terrible situation and we've got to get out. And, you know, that's a tragedy. That, I think, quoting Virilio, that's the accelerated modernity that we're in. Normally, in the old days, 10, 15, certainly 20 years ago, you could see the decline of an organisation and it would move more slowly. But now we're in a situation where a Vice-Chancellor can call a town hall meeting, make a decision at 10 o'clock, and your life is destroyed by midday. So what I want to try and do in this series is walk with you through the good times, and we've done that. But this one is preparing you for a bad time that will occur. What I'm trying to do is whisper with you, just on your shoulder, keeping you active, keeping you prepared, keeping you ready, keeping you centered in your power, and remembering Marx's second freedom. So what we're trying to do today is just make sure you've always got a plan B, C, and D in your working life. You have your labour power to sell, we know that, but you have value. So let's keep you centered and knowing of your value. So let me tell you the model that we're going to use today. Some of the most dreadful people that I've ever met, and I've met some shockers, are dominant, overconfident, and intentionally gather up power by taking it off other people. They exploit others. But of course their power and their confidence is overstretched and overstated because no plan works forever and no workplace is stable forever. The goal of a PhD, the goal of a university education more generally, is to grant you choices. So what education gives you, you get choices. So remember those choices and be prepared to use them. Now, I learnt how to visualize these alternatives from some of the most amazing students I've ever supervised. I had the great gift of supervising a few paramedic researchers. They changed my life. Amazing researchers. Big respect to all the paramedics out there. You are changing the world. You're also changing knowledge, and you've certainly changed my methodology about life. And they offered me some advice about their job, being a paramedic, that happened to have transformed the entire way I think about my life. And their first rule, the first rule of paramedicine is, when you enter a house, First, locate the exits. Fantastic. So when you enter a doctoral program, locate the exit. When you enter a job, locate the exits. And then when you do that, when you've located the exits, all of a sudden, magically, you have alternatives. And those alternatives give you flexibility in your thinking and indeed flexibility in your choices. So in the post this week, we're going to locate those exits. And we're going to make sure in every job, no matter how happy you are at this particular point, we are locating your exits. So for those of you that have just got a job, that is fantastic. Well done you. Congratulations. Certainly sit in that achievement and enjoy that achievement. But now I want you to plan for me. I never want you desperate. I never want you forgetting about the power that you hold. So let's construct 10 quick exits. Let's do this for you to finish the series. 1, hello, pay yourself first. This, of course, is the mantra of my entire life. Pay yourself first. Now, your workplace quite rightly has standards and achievements and outcomes that they require you to do. And that's great. That's important. You are being paid. You have to produce excellence and high quality work in your workplace. Full stop, no doubt. And you need to give that current job attention and professionalism and care. But you also at all times need to remember your career aims and your career goals. Now, as you know, I get up, as you can see by the state of me, I get up very, very early, and I've done that since 1993. So by the time I record these vlogs, and it's still pretty early, but I get up at 2:30. So I'm recording these vlogs about 6:30 in the morning, and I've already done a fair amount of work. But the first 2 hours of my day are completely about me. They're for my research and they're for my writing. Therefore, before you commence your working day, pay yourself first. It may only be 30 minutes, and that's great. Focus on your goals. Have a clear plan and execute that plan and commit to it. Now, if you neglect to pay yourself first, you start to become lost in the goals of other people. So you give everything to a workplace, and I respect that. You give everything to a workplace, but that workplace will discard you. Okay? So every morning, start with you. Come on, start with yourself. What I need you to do is every morning complete one task for me. It may be you give yourself the job of writing 500 words a day. Brilliant, great. It may be I will read an article every morning. Brilliant, great, fantastic. And that's how you build plan Bs. They come through 30 minutes of writing a day, every day. That's how you build a plan B. So remain the star of your own life and pay yourself first. 2, always be translocal, if you can, and international in your thinking. Now, too often in our universities, too often, particularly at the moment, academics are becoming siloed. So they're living in a microclimate, they're fighting micro wars about micro events. None of it really matters too much, it's just busy work. And every day what I'd ask is you force yourself, you pull yourself out of that local mode. I want you to read widely, I want you to read wildly, read internationally for me. Because I want you to move beyond your city, your region, your nation. Expand, stretch, come on, be international. Publish beyond your nation, review beyond your nation, meet new people beyond your nation state. And I think the power of this diverse lens and understanding diverse policies and procedures, different ways of running research integrity, for example, or academic integrity, all of that gives you agency. Second freedom gives you agency and gives you confidence. Now, some of the most brittle and frightening people I know, and wow, I've met a few in the last 5 years, some of the most brittle and frightening people I know have lived and stayed in one location almost all of their professional lives. So what's happened is, as they've aged, and they're about my age or a bit older, is that they've spent the bulk of their life living in a social, intellectual and political bunker. And they fear what is outside the bunker, what is outside of their bubble. This is not good for teaching. This is not good for research. It's not good for an intellectual life. Hell, it's not good for the planet. The way to have a plan B and to locate an exit is to see the world in its complexity, in its granularity, and welcome it. Because what happens when you test yourself like that is you're mobile in your thinking. So force yourself to move beyond the daily gossip and micro intrigues and micro crises. Transcend and transform. Move beyond the local mode. Which leads us to 3. Know the value of mobility. Here we go. Now I know, firstly let me say this is a tough one. And I thought, will I put this in? And look, I will, because I always try and be honest with you. But let me also state as a caveat, I know there are wonderful, remarkable human beings out there with personal responsibilities that locate you in a particular place and time. They may be caring responsibilities for kids in school. They may be caring responsibilities for different generations in your family. So I respect you and I respect the work that you do, that caring work, enormously. Okay, so let's just put that out there. Now let's work out what we can do about it. I need to talk about the great work from the late John Urry, and so we need to talk about the importance of mobility and mobilities. Now, we need to grasp that mobility is a marker of class. People in power are mobile, people without power are immobile. So every single appointment process, you will be competing with people who have worked around the world, who have been mobile. The people who have run towards different ways of thinking, different ways of being, different ways of understanding the world. Enthusiasts for difference. You're competing with those people. Now, I would argue one of the great problems that exists in Australia, in particular, is that there's a large group of academics that have never left a particular city. Okay, and I'm thinking particularly Perth, Brisbane, and Adelaide. People are there and they stay there. In the UK, the version of this is probably people stay for a long time in Brighton or in Manchester. Now, they're all lovely cities. I've lived and worked in all of them and I love them. But if an academic spends 20 years in one city, then their capacity to be a scholar of the world and be mobile is reduced. Because what happens is it creates those silos or those bunkers or those bubbles that we talked about in my last maxim 2. So what I need you to do is go into a job and locate the exits, and know that the great thing about running towards an exit is that it will confirm your mobility. Because what you're trying to do is build a career that demonstrates that you can manage movement. Now, movement is a proxy for dexterity, for inclusion and intellectual challenge, and it critiques inwardness and self-satisfaction. So just watch your capacity to locate yourself in one location, and importantly be self-satisfied in that location. So academics move, and yes, we move our bodies and our jobs through cities and through nations. But if that is not possible for you, so you have caring responsibilities, I just want you aware of this, and I want to construct an avert strategy for you so that you understand the value of movement and you can speak to this matter. So how are you disseminating your ideas widely while living in one location. And I also want to log Troy Heffernan. Hi, Troy. Great research, great guy, can I say. I wrote one article with him, lovely guy. Great research and publications about casualisation. His writing in the last 3-4 years is profound. He's also looked at the relationship between academic mobility and career achievement and career success. So Troy is producing great work, and he's also exploring the consequences of casualisation on academics' lives. So I really recommend his work. He's showing, and you can quote this work in interviews, about the impact of all this type of complexity and casualisation in academic life and what it does to humans. But his research does show without a doubt the profound career impact of mobility. So you will need to move. And that movement may be of your body through different jobs, but think about overtly strategies to move your mind around the world and to move your ideas around the world. Mobility gives you power. Mobility gives you an exit. 4, build your story file. Yep. Now, as we talked about in the interview post for this particular series, one of the 4 types or modes of question that you're going to get will be behavioural. They are the most difficult questions to answer without a doubt, because you're required to hear a question in real time in an interview and then magically summon an event or a story from your current or previous jobs that answers that question. Very, very hard to do in real time in an interview. Therefore, what I'm giving you is the shortcut to help you do that for next time. So in your current job, hello, yep, now I want you to open up a Word document and call it work stories. Work stories. And when something happens in your current job, so an impossible timeline arrives, so suddenly you've got to do a task and it's incredibly difficult and the timeline is very short, so suddenly this has arrived, or you're managing a toxic encounter with a student or with a colleague, or you've had to, what they call manage up, work with a line manager to try and shape and change their view. You've had to address attrition, or something, say, weird has occurred, like in one particular course, the rainbow community suddenly is attriting from that course or leaving that course. So something odd is occurring. So in other words, a problem or a puzzle emerges in your current job. Excellent. What are you going to do about it? So list that puzzle or that problem in your work stories file, and then once a week, puzzle it out. Render it into a story, into a narrative, and show how your behaviour has actioned change. What happened? What did you do? What outcomes did you create? So what you're doing is actually using your current job as a database for interview material for your next job. So do this with intentionality and do this with precision. You're doing great work in your current workplace. That's great, fantastic, incredibly important. But remember that all these events and actions become the fodder to get you through that exit. People talk way too much, I would argue, about transferable skills. But actually, the way to connect your current workplace with your future workplace is through stories. 5, keep your CV current. Now, I absolutely understand. When any of us get a job, we're just excited and relieved and probably a bit tired and emotional, and we just want to sit back and go, I'm just enjoying this. I'm just sitting. I'm just going to sit and take a breath. But the problem we've all got is that there's no gap, there's no breather. This is late capitalism. This is tough. So all I'd ask is, even through that sort of relief of getting that job, once a week for me, just once a week, go to your CV, take 5 minutes, review it, locate a gap, go, oh, that's something to address, and start to address it. Now, my mark every week for me when I'm doing well is once a week at least I can add something to my CV. It may be a publication, maybe an interesting teaching event, maybe a new skill, maybe PD. Now, just like we discussed early on that the CV is a diagnostic for your development to get a job, it is a diagnostic for you to get the next job. Locating an exit, often in a point of crisis, requires an up-to-date CV. And the hardest people to help are those who have been in a job for 5 years and haven't really touched their CV for 5 years. They haven't thought through the skills, the abilities, what they now bring to the new job that they didn't have when they started this current one, okay? So this is really important. And to be honest with you, and you rarely hear me talking about sort of coaching, because I think there's a lot of weird stuff happening in the coaching space. But if somebody has done very little on their CV for 5 years and desperately has to get out of a job, getting a coach for 1 month and getting that CV and everything current is probably not a bad idea. But you don't need to do that and use a coach if once a week you are going to your CV. So visit your CV, review it, and hopefully add an achievement to it once a week. Keep it current, keep it relevant, and that will allow you to walk to a new exit. 6, professional development is your friend. Yes, you knew that I would go here. And I make a point every week of doing one thing, at least one thing with professional development. It might be a 30-minute, I'm learning a new bit of software. That's exciting, tremendous. It may be a certificate course that I do once a week. Fantastic, great. So if we want to keep ourselves dynamic as a human, let alone mobile as an academic, then we have to ensure that our lives are learning lives, that we're never lost in self-absorption or self-satisfaction or complacency. So in your new job, give yourself a PD, professional development schedule. Now, in the early stages of the job, that's pretty straightforward. Most jobs have sort of these mandatory requirements that you need to do. Occupational health and safety. Love Occy health and safety. Fantastic. They'll give you mandatory requirements. So do all of those. That's great as well. Add them to your CV. Brilliant. But once the mandatory requirements are done, they take often about 3 months. Give yourself a structured learning intervention each week. Ask yourself every Saturday morning, Tara, what did you learn this week? What did you learn, girlfriend? What did you learn? Ask yourself that question every Saturday morning. You see, exits are created by keeping yourself current, keeping yourself mobile, and demonstrating your capacity to be creative and curious and open and engaged. Professional development, you see, is a proxy for other attributes in the workplace, like growth, like achievement, like excellence. You are committing to excellence. You know what you know what you don't know, and you are moving towards excellence. PD gets you there. So you are going to be competing with people who have parked their professional development. Now, they'll be sitting in their ego and going, I know everything there is to know. Yeah, nah, they don't. But just remember, for all of us who have had dreadful doctoral supervision, hi to all of you out there, think about those dreadful supervisors, and there are thousands of dreadful supervisors on this planet, we know that. And what's happening is they did their PhD a really, really long time ago, and they've engaged with no professional development since that time, while doctoral studies is this enlivening, passionate, powerful new subdiscipline, which they don't even know exists because they got their data set of one when I did my PhD, and that's what they're sharing with students. So great teaching, great research comes from what I call C-O-E, curiosity, openness, and engagement. Curiosity, openness, and engagement. So you develop the proxies for from professional development. Okay, 7. Block your tendency to compare yourself with others. Let's do this. Universities are currently set up around metrics. You've got all the teaching evaluations, all the absolutely bonkers research metrics, yawn. And then we have the invented pseudo management stuff like 360-degree reviews. Oh, I'm so scared. The system is set up so that we compare ourselves to others and find ourselves lacking. Comparisons melt your sense of self-worth. Therefore, what I need you to do is develop your plan, develop your career arc, develop your trajectory. Absolutely and completely ignore the comparisons and the benchmarks and the metrics, because you've walked into that job on your own and you're going to walk out of that job on your own. Assemble your goals and create a daily methodology so you can reach them. Be the star of your own life. Wish other people well, but give them space. Stay in your lane, keep your eyes on the exit, and know that your closest exit may be behind you. Other people's views about you are irrelevant. They don't matter at all. Centre yourself, construct a plan A, B, C, and D, wish others well. But other people's achievements have nothing to do with you. Nothing. You have to locate your exits and keep your eyes on them. Don't let other people obscure the exits for you. Yep. 8. Oh, yeah. Don't take shortcuts to the exit. Be ethical. Now, everything we've talked about in this post has been about you remaining centered, calm, in control, but also keeping your eyes on all the exits around you. So if something terrible happens, you can walk to the exit rather than run with some desperation. But one of the consequences of let's use the phrases, the toxic university sector or the zombie university sector, is that our leadership structures are populated with people who have taken shortcuts. Not all, not most, but there is a group of people who are in leadership roles who have taken shortcuts. So, for example, there are academics on this planet, and certain wonderful humans are listing them. And these humans have supposedly published an article a week. Let me say that again. Publish an article a week. And of course, they're gathering all the citations from the articles that they're publishing every week. So this behaviour of writing 40, 60, 100, the highest I've seen is 186 articles in a year. So, of course, and when I say writing, of course, they're not writing them, they're being added as an author, as a guest author, it's just nonsense. But this sort of behaviour is now being called out. People are logging this behaviour, logging this human, and going through their publications. So there's a transparency around this very odd research inelegance in our culture. But you see, in tough times, and we are in tough times, I understand completely that people may want to take shortcuts, create those little authorship groups where there's guest authorship or courtesy authorship. You haven't done much, but sort of you'll all do it and you all add each other's names to articles. And I understand it, but I don't respect it. You see, there are so many opportunities in our universities for corruption, for conflicts of interest, for turning a blind eye to vested interests, or not standing up to bullies, not standing up to human beings who are hurting others in our system and sector. The trouble is, and I really know this because I research this qual and quant, is that the people who add their names to articles gain from it. So they gain promotion from this bad behaviour. The exploiters get on. I know that. But the question is, colleagues, what do we do with that information that exploiters get on in their careers? What do we do? Now, my argument is we make different choices noting that information. Remember, there's never been more visibility on authorship and authorship rights than right now. So people can go to Google Scholar and see every single article that someone's supposedly written, look at their positioning in the article and go, are they dinkum? Are they real? And some very difficult questions can and should be asked about authorship every single day. Also, these freeloaders, these exploiters, are now taking major risks. If anyone was ripped off, and I'm talking even decades ago, then a research misconduct claim can be summoned today. And these are career-ending investigations. An ethics breach can be discussed, and that is a career-ending investigation. Standing while watching the abuse of others, that's a career-ending investigation. And of course, the people who are part of a cover-up of abuse, sexual assault, sexual harassment, bullying, the people part of a cover-up, that's a career-ending investigation. Now, I know academic life seems profoundly unfair. I get that. And the people who rip off other people are rewarded. But what I'd ask is, let's all maintain ethics, maintain your work ethic, no shortcuts, don't be a bystander to injustice or corruption. And know that every single day, those people who have taken shortcuts are carrying stress and fear with them, because on any given day, they may be found out. So we now have the international policy tools to start to enact these investigations. So stand in your power, stand in your commitment to hard work, governance, and transparency, and know that every achievement that you have gained has been in response to your effort, your hard work. And that's a pretty good feeling. 9. Try to locate the exits before a crisis. This is hard to do, because I think our universities now are so volatile on the precariat workforce and so forth, very difficult. And a university can go from very stable and calm to an absolute shambles in a 30-minute meeting with a vice-chancellor. Right. So that's why I always say, when you're going to agree to a job, I need you to do a full investigation of your line manager and their line manager and their line manager. Most of us in a university are 3 to 5 steps away from the Vice-Chancellor. I would advise very strongly that you do your research on each of those line managers. And what's that research look like? Well, you're going to search for things like research integrity, research misconduct, academic integrity, academic misconduct, sexual harassment, sexual assault, or covering up sexual assault and sexual harassment. Now, we can never know everything about another human being. We are all interior humans with our interior thoughts. But if a leader is volatile, there will be material online that logs that volatility. And I'm not saying you don't take that job. You might be in that job. But know that with the volatility, you may get a year out of this job. You may get 3 if you're lucky, but you've got to keep your eye on the exits. Now, you know I use that cliche a lot, begin with the end in mind. But the version that I'm using today is, when you enter a job, locate the exits. And that's why you need to keep monitoring all those job advertisements, even in good times. Because the goal is to get at the next job, get it as quickly as you can when you're in a difficult problem. But how do you know when a crisis occurs? Well, what I'd say is presciently configure a different way of thinking. You enter a job and you go, right, well, I'm going to be in this job for a year, right? If you can then stretch it from a year, stretch it to 3 years, that's tremendous, that's great. And then if you can stretch it once more to 5 years, you've done a magnificent job. 1, 3, 5. Now, after 5 years, there's nothing really new that you can learn about that job, right? So 5 years is really the point where if you're interested in a career arc, you need to get another job so you continue to learn. But we all know when bad stuff happens, everybody runs to the exit and then nobody can get out, right? And there are certain universities around the world at the moment that those exits are very, very crowded. But I need you, therefore, to keep stable, keep aware. Get to a year, get to 3 years, get to 5 if you can. But keep looking at job advertisements throughout the entire period. I need you to be prescient. The goal through all of this is to create opportunities. Remember, Karl Marx's second freedom. And the trick is, and it's very difficult to do, I nearly said impossible, but it's not. But the trick is to get out before the crisis hits. And one way to do that is make sure that everything in your career, your CV, everything is completely up to date almost all of the time. And my final advice is get out while it's still reasonably pleasant. Now, I've had in my career, of the 10 jobs, I've had 3 that I stayed in the role too long. And I knew actually in real time in the job that I was staying there too long. So just be aware of that. And also try to leave while it's still an okay and pleasant experience rather than a bin fire. Okay? You know what I'm talking about. 10. Always remember that you've got choices. Okay. Bullying and gaslighting cultures are so common in workplaces and they're increasingly common in our universities. And why they're so dreadful to a human being and indeed to a human spirit is that gaslighting and bullying makes you feel small, lesser, compressed in on yourself. So we start to live and work and start to feel that we're always in this dark tunnel. And so we lose sight of the exits. You see, the whole point of bullies and gaslighters is they're intentionally trying to block your exits. But of course, there are always plenty of exits around. The closest one may be behind you. And there are plenty of choices. Now, most academics who bully are dreadful and poor academics, underperforming academics. And you see, they don't have choices and they try to inhibit the choices of others. Academics have a nasty tendency to eat their own young. But also when all of us are desperate in bullying or gaslighting cultures, we make mistakes. Desperation creates errors. And look, I could give you hundreds of examples of this that I've done. It's on me, absolute disaster. But I'll just give you the one that transformed my life and probably destroyed my life, okay? So we were at a university, Steve was being bullied dreadfully. This was the excrement under the door stuff. So he'd open the door in the morning and there was excrement sitting in his work office. He was being bullied dreadfully and no one in the university was helping him at all. No one supported him at all. And he was not getting suicidal, he was suicidal. So it was quite frightening because every day I'd come home from work and not know if he'd be hanging from a rafter in our bedroom. Frightening. So I moved us. And look, I believed in that job. I really believed in that job, right? And we arrived and we were excited and we thought we'd be in this nation, till we retired. But we arrived, it was clear that the entire workforce were drunkards. They were at the bar at 11 o'clock in the morning. The leadership was the worst leadership I've ever seen. Colleagues were killing themselves with the strain. Okay. So then I had a new problem to manage and I had to get us out again. And again, moved jobs, moved countries again to another unstable situation. And I knew going in that it was unstable, but I loved the staff. I loved the students. It's probably of all the jobs I've had, my favourite job. I believed in the project of the university. I loved it. But there was dreadful leadership an out of control vice chancellor, and I mean really out of control, just sacking people randomly, sacking people in a meeting. He's in a lift with someone, I don't like you, you're sacked. So again, not a stable situation. So he was not in control, and that wasn't stable for us either. So in a 2-year period, I had 3 jobs to just try and get us stable. Now and I take full responsibility for that. They were my decisions. I take full responsibility for that. But do you notice that cascade of desperation and bad decisions were all caused by a violent bullying situation that destroyed Steve's life? And that's why, from that point in my life and for all the students around me, I've always recommended applying for multiple jobs. No desperation, you have the choice. And when you maintain choices, suddenly you're no longer rendering decisions through the lens of a crisis. What happens is you're able to walk with some dignity to an exit rather than run with some desperation towards it. So I want to thank you all for being with us through this very long series. You've been absolutely amazing. Thank you for walking with me through this. And I've been requested to do this series, I think, for about 6 or 7 years. So it's great that it's finally in the can and you've got it if and when you ever need it. And can I say, the feedback has been amazing. I've got hundreds of emails from you all. And there's about 15 of you that have been doing interviews and trying to get a job while each week's installment has appeared. So I am thrilled for you, and we will all continue to walk with you to a very dignified exit and a new beginning. So let's all be the change that we want to see, and not only help ourselves, but stop other colleagues from making decisions in desperation. I wish you love, light, and peace. Tea out.